Tonight we drift slowly through quiet animated architectures. Rooftops, porches, bridges, and small corners of towns painted to feel like places you could rest inside. These are spaces that hold stillness, places where time seems to pause and soften at the edges. Soft moonlight bathes curved rooftops in a gentle silver glow, spreading across each surface like water finding its way into every quiet hollow. The light moves slowly, without hurry, touching the edges of tiles and tracing the lines where one roof meets another. Warm lantern light spills from arched windows onto quiet cobblestone streets below, pooling in the spaces between stones, filling the cracks with amber warmth. The glow is steady and patient, never flickering too brightly, just enough to mark the boundary between shadow and gentle illumination. Rooftops slope into shadow, their angles softening as they fall away from the light, cradled by midnight blue that seems to hold them gently in place. Tiled houses nestle together, their walls touching, their edges aligned, glistening like dewdrops beneath the stars. Each tile catches a fragment of moonlight, holding it for a moment before releasing it back into the quiet night. The surfaces shimmer faintly, not with movement but with presence, a soft reminder that they are there, waiting, resting. Sloping house roofs shimmer faintly in the stillness, their surfaces made of thatch and slate settling into the calm of night. The thatch is thick and textured, woven tight, holding warmth within its layers. The slate is cool and smooth, dark and reflective, catching only the barest trace of light. Both rest together, side by side, breathing the same slow rhythm. Chimneys release lazy wisps of smoke that curl upward into the open air, moving without intention, drifting on currents too gentle to see. The smoke dissolves slowly, fading into the night sky as if it had always been part of it. Attic windows glow faintly from rounded dormers, their glass holding a soft light that never quite reaches the street, but lingers in the space between inside and outside. The dormers themselves are small and curved, their frames made of worn wood that has known many seasons. And the houses breathe in unity. Their walls exhale the night's calm embrace, releasing the warmth of the day in slow, invisible waves. Brick and stone and plaster all settle together, each surface giving itself over to the stillness. The walls do not stand rigid, they rest. They lean gently into one another, bound by proximity and shared silence. There is no rush here, no urgency. Only the quiet presence of structure and shadow, tile and timber, light and the long, soft breathing of the night. Dim shop awnings sway softly in the night breeze, their fabric rippling gently like a sigh released into the open air. The movement is slow and rhythmic, barely perceptible, as if the awnings themselves are breathing in time with the quiet that surrounds them. The fabric is worn and soft, its colors muted by moonlight and shadow, faded perhaps by many seasons of sun and rain. It moves without sound, without resistance, only the gentlest shift back and forth, tracing invisible patterns in the stillness. Shop windows display pastel glows from hanging lanterns that rest just inside the glass, their curved surfaces catching and holding the light in soft, diffused halos. The glow is pale and tender, rose and cream and the faintest wash of amber, never bright enough to break the night, only enough to suggest warmth, to hint at shelter. The curved glass of the windows is etched with fine lace of dew, tiny beads that gather at the edges and in the corners, each one holding a fragment of light, each one trembling slightly when the breeze passes by. The glass itself is old, slightly uneven, rippling in places where time has softened its surface. Inside, counters reflect candlelight in polished wood that has been touched by many hands, smoothed by years of use. The wood is dark and warm, its grain visible in the flickering glow, lines running through it like quiet rivers. The candlelight does not dance. It simply rests there, steady and low, casting long reflections that stretch across the counter's surface and fade into shadow at the edges. Shelves lined with jars catch faint gleams, the glass containers standing in rows, their contents obscured by dim light and dusty labels. Each jar holds its own small echo of luminosity, a glint here, a faint shimmer there, as if the light is passing through them slowly, reluctantly. Signs swing lazily above the doorways, suspended from wrought iron hooks that creak ever so softly when the breeze stirs them. The letters are painted in muted glow, soft yellows and pale greens that have faded over time, barely legible now in the low light. They do not announce or proclaim. They simply exist, marking the threshold between street and shelter. Doorbells gleam under evening shadows, their brass surfaces dull, but still catching the occasional flicker of lantern light from within. They hang perfectly still, waiting, untouched by hurry or urgency. Thresholds step down gently onto cobblestone paths, the stone worn smooth in the center where countless footsteps have passed, rough and uneven at the edges where moss has begun to gather. The steps are shallow, their surfaces cool to the touch, darkened by moisture and time. They descend without ceremony, leading quietly from doorway to street, from interior warmth to the open night air. Shutters lean closed against the windows, their slats filtering warm lantern light into soft stripes that spill across the street below. The light passes through the narrow gaps, breaking into thin bands of gold and amber that stretch over cobblestone and settle into the spaces between. The stripes do not move. They hold their shape, steady and patient, painting the street in gentle patterns that shift only when a shutter is nudged ever so slightly by the breeze. The shutters themselves are wooden, their paint peeling in places, hinges heavy with age. They rest against the window frames as if leaning into them for support, filtering the world inside from the world outside, allowing only whispers of light to pass between. Street corner lampposts cast golden circles on smooth pavement, their halos expanding softly into the mist that has begun to settle low over the street. The light spreads outward in gradual rings, fading as it reaches farther from the source, dissolving into the surrounding darkness with no sharp edges, no sudden endings. The pavement beneath is worn smooth by years of footsteps, its surface reflecting the lamplight in a soft, subdued glow that seems to come from within the stone itself. The golden circles overlap where two lampposts stand near one another, their light mingling in the space between, creating a warmer, deeper pool of illumination that rests gently on the ground. Benches wait under wrought iron frames that curve and twist in elegant, unhurried lines, their metal dark and cool to the touch. The frames are old, their surfaces traced with the faintest patina of age, small flecks of rust visible in the joints where moisture has gathered over time. The benches themselves are wooden, their slats worn smooth in the center, rough at the edges. Cushions rest upon them, touched by moonlight that turns their fabric pale and soft, draining color and leaving only shape and texture. The cushions are slightly damp from the evening air, compressed in places where someone might have sat hours ago, still holding the memory of weight and warmth. Mosaic tiles shimmer faintly along the base of walls and in small alcoves set into the street, their tiny fragments of colored glass and ceramic catching what little light reaches them. Each tile is no larger than a thumbnail, arranged in patterns that repeat and shift, spirals and flowers, geometric shapes that fold into one another. The colors are muted now, dulled by shadow and time, but they still hold a quiet vibrancy beneath the surface. Blues and greens, deep reds and ochres, all pressed together, grouted with lines of pale gray that have darkened over the years. Puddles mirror slow ripples of amber lamp glow, their surfaces disturbed only by the occasional drop of condensation falling from an awning or a leaf drifting down from an unseen branch. The ripples move outward in concentric circles, distorting the reflection of the lamppost above, bending the light into waves that spread and fade and spread again. The water is shallow, pooled in the low spots of the cobblestone where the street has settled unevenly. It holds the color of the lamp, warm gold and soft orange, and gives it back to the night in flickering liquid form. Vintage globes atop the lampposts fog gently in the cool air, their glass surfaces clouding with moisture that clings to them like breath on a cold window. The fog softens the light even further, diffusing it so that the glow seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The globes are round and slightly imperfect, blown glass that has small bubbles trapped within, tiny imperfections that catch the light and scatter it in unexpected directions. Quiet newsstands stand at the corner, their wooden frames weathered and gray, shutters pulled closed for the night. The paint has chipped away in places, revealing layers of older colors beneath. Pale green, faded blue, a hint of yellow. A few folded papers still rest on the shelf inside, visible through the slats, their edges curling slightly in the dampness. Planters rich with dark soil sit nearby, their surfaces cracked and dry at the rim, moist and heavy deeper down. The soil smells faintly of earth and decay, of things growing slowly in the darkness. Small shoots and trailing vines spill over the edges, their leaves brushing against the stone. Flower boxes blooming faint under lantern light hang from window ledges and rest on low walls, their blooms barely visible in the dim glow. The flowers are pale, white and soft pink, lavender and cream, their petals closed or half-closed for the night. They do not stand upright but lean gently to one side, following some invisible pull. The wooden boxes that hold them are old and worn, their corners softened by moisture and time, small gaps visible between the boards. Every corner feels like a resting place held together by gentle light, a space where movement has paused and stillness has been allowed to settle. The light does not illuminate so much as it accompanies, marking the edges of things without revealing them fully, allowing shadows to remain, allowing the night to keep its quiet secrets close. Bridges arch calmly over sleeping rivers and canals, their curves rising and falling with a grace that feels both ancient and timeless. The stonework is softened by mist that clings to every surface, settling into the joints between blocks, gathering in the crevices where mortar has worn away. The stone itself is cool and damp, its texture rough in some places, smoothed by water and weather in others. The bridges do not strain or reach. They simply rest, spanning the distance between one bank and another with quiet confidence. Their weight distributed evenly, held by foundations buried deep beneath the waterline. Railings draped with vines sway in the hush, the tendrils moving almost imperceptibly, disturbed only by the gentlest breath of air. The vines are thick in places, their leaves dark and glossy, catching faint traces of moonlight on their surfaces. They twist around the iron railings, weaving through the bars, clinging with small curling shoots that grip tightly. The railings themselves are wrought iron, their surfaces cold to the touch, slightly corroded where moisture has settled year after year. They curve upward at intervals, forming decorative flourishes that have softened with age, their once sharp edges now rounded and smooth. Twin arches reflect perfectly in mirror-still water below, their shapes doubled and inverted, forming complete circles that seem to float just beneath the surface. The reflection is so precise, so undisturbed, that it becomes difficult to tell where the bridge ends and its image begins. The circles hover in the water, held in place by stillness, trembling only when the faintest current passes through or when a single leaf touches down and sends the smallest ripple outward. The water is dark, not black, but a deep charcoal blue, absorbing light rather than scattering it, holding the reflection close as if protecting it from the world above. Lanterns hang like fireflies along the bridges, suspended from hooks and iron posts that line the walkway. Each lantern holds a small flame or a soft electric glow, warm and amber, flickering occasionally but never going out. The light they cast is gentle, spilling downward onto the bridge's surface and outward over the railings, falling in soft patterns onto the water below. The lanterns themselves are simple, metal frames with glass panels, some fogged with condensation, some clear enough to see the light source within. They sway ever so slightly when the breeze passes, their chains creaking faintly, casting ripples over dark water that shift and pulse in rhythm with their movement. Wooden planks worn smooth by time stretch silently overhead on some of the older bridges, their surfaces pale and weathered, grain raised in places where softer wood has worn away faster than the harder rings. The planks are wide and thick, laid side by side with narrow gaps between them through which light and air can pass. They do not creak or groan. They have been walked upon so many times that all sound has been worn out of them. Footsteps would pass over them in silence, absorbed by the density of the wood, swallowed by years of compression and use. Bridge cables hum softly in the distance, thin lines of steel stretch taut between towers, vibrating at frequencies too low to hear clearly but felt in the air around them. The hum is constant and unchanging, a presence more than a sound, like the faint ringing that lingers after a bell has been struck. The cables are dark against the sky, barely visible except where they catch the reflection of distant light, thin and precise, cutting through the mist in perfect straight lines. Supports rise sturdy and sure from the water and the earth, pillars of stone and steel that hold the bridges aloft without strain or effort. They are thick at the base, narrowing slightly as they rise, their surfaces stained by water and time, streaked with moss and algae where moisture gathers. The supports do not move. They have stood for decades, perhaps longer, rooted deeply, unmoved by wind or current or the passage of countless feet above. And the silhouettes rest gently against a faint horizon, the outline of the bridges barely distinguishable from the sky behind them. The horizon is not sharp but soft, blurred by mist and distance, a gradient of dark blues fading into lighter grays. The bridges dissolve into it at their farthest points, becoming part of the landscape rather than standing apart from it, their forms merging with the night as if they had always been there, as if they would always remain. Train station tracks gleam silver as they curve quietly into shadow, their metal surfaces polished smooth by the passage of countless wheels, reflecting what little light reaches them from the lanterns above. The tracks run parallel for a time, then begin to diverge, bending away from one another in long, gradual arcs that disappear into the distance. The rails are cool and damp, beaded with moisture that clings to them in the night air. Between the tracks, the gravel bed is dark and uneven, small stones pressed down into the earth, stained with oil and dust and the residue of years. The tracks themselves seem to hum with a faint energy, not from movement but from memory, as if they still carry the echo of trains that passed through hours or days before. Signals blink slowly in rhythmic pulses along the length of the platform. Green, then stillness, then green again. The lights are small and precise, mounted on tall posts that rise from the edge of the tracks, their lenses encased in metal housings streaked with rust. The green glow is soft and subdued, casting a faint wash of color onto the gravel and the nearest rail. The blink is not sharp but gradual, fading in and fading out, a slow breath of light that marks time without urgency. Between each pulse there is stillness, complete and uninterrupted, before the light returns, gentle and reassuring. A quiet promise that the line is clear, that all is as it should be. Platforms stretch empty beneath softly humming lanterns that hang from iron brackets bolted into the underside of the canopy above. The platforms are long and narrow, paved with concrete or old tile that has cracked in places, weeds pushing through the gaps where mortar has crumbled away. The edges are marked with painted lines, yellow or white, faded now but still visible, a reminder to stand back, to keep safe. The surface is damp, darkened by the evening air, reflecting the lantern light in long, blurred streaks. There are benches along the platform, wooden slats set into wrought iron frames, empty now, waiting. A few forgotten objects rest on them. A folded newspaper, a scarf left behind, things that will remain until morning. The lanterns hum softly, a low electrical vibration that blends into the background, almost imperceptible but present if you listen closely. The light they cast is warm and steady, falling in pools that overlap and merge, creating a continuous glow along the length of the platform. The glass enclosures are fogged slightly, dulling the light, softening it further so that it never feels harsh or intrusive. Canopies arch protectively overhead, their metal frames painted in dark green or deep blue, the paint peeling in places to reveal layers of older colors beneath. The canopies are wide and graceful, supported by slender columns that rise from the platform at regular intervals. The underside is ribbed with beams and crossbars, shadows gathering in the spaces between. Rain would drum against them, but tonight they are dry, silent, simply holding space above the platform, sheltering it from the open sky. High vaults echo with peaceful silence, the sound of nothing amplified by the emptiness of the space. The vaults are tall, arching upward to meet at a central peak, their surfaces made of painted metal or old plaster that has darkened with age. The acoustics are soft and forgiving, swallowing small sounds, letting them fade rather than bounce back sharply. A footstep would be heard, then absorbed. A distant cough would carry briefly, then vanish. The silence itself feels thick and tangible, something you could almost reach out and touch. Pillars stand tall and steady throughout the station, their bases wide and solid, their surfaces made of stone or brick or concrete painted over many times. Shadows pool around their bases, gathering in the corners where the pillar meets the ground, spreading outward in soft gradients. The pillars taper slightly as they rise, their edges smoothed by time and touch, their surfaces cool and slightly rough. They do not sway or shift. They are rooted, immovable, holding the weight of the canopy and the vault above without strain, without complaint. While distant clocks glow amber against the deep sky, their faces large and round, mounted high on walls or towers at the far end of the platform. The numbers are bold and simple, the hands thick and dark, moving so slowly that their progress is impossible to see. The amber glow comes from lights behind the clock face, shining through translucent material, casting the time outward into the night. The clocks do not chime or tick audibly from this distance. They simply exist, marking the hours in silence, their warm glow a beacon in the darkness, a point of reference for anyone waiting, for anyone watching, for anyone who needs to know that time, though it passes, does so gently here. Ticket booths glow inwardly with brass lamp warmth, their small enclosed spaces lit from within by fixtures that have been burning low for hours. The booths are compact and intimate, their counters made of polished wood worn smooth by the touch of countless hands reaching forward with coins or tickets or questions spoken through small circular openings cut into the glass. The glass itself is thick and slightly clouded, fogged at the edges where condensation has gathered and never quite evaporated. Behind it, the brass lamps cast their warm glow across ledgers and schedules, across stamp pads and ticket rolls, across surfaces that have not been disturbed since the last train departed. The light does not spill outward aggressively. It stays contained, held within the booth, visible through the glass like something precious kept safe inside a lantern. Waiting rooms cradle cushioned seats in amber light, the chairs arranged in rows or clusters, their upholstery soft and slightly worn, fabric faded in places where sunlight has touched them during the day. The cushions give slightly when weight is placed upon them, then slowly return to their original shape, holding the memory of whoever sat there last. The amber light comes from wall sconces and table lamps placed throughout the room, They're shades made of frosted glass or aged fabric that filters the light into something gentle and forgiving. The walls are paneled in dark wood or painted in muted tones. Deep greens, soft grays, colors that recede rather than demand attention. The floor is tiled or wooden, its surface polished but no longer gleaming, dulled by years of footsteps and the passage of luggage dragged across it. Luggage carts rest with wheels stilled for the night, their metal frames leaning slightly to one side, handles angled upward, waiting to be grasped. The wheels are large and sturdy, made of rubber or hardwood banded with iron, their treads worn smooth in the center where they have rolled most often. The carts are empty now, their flat surfaces bare except for a thin layer of dust that has settled over the course of the evening. They are parked in corners or lined up against walls, forgotten until morning, their purpose suspended, their motion paused. The metal of the frames is cool to the touch, slightly damp, the joints and rivets visible where pieces have been bolted together, small spots of rust blooming where moisture has found its way in. Ceilings vault toward chandeliers dimmed to starry points high above, the fixtures hanging from long chains or rods that descend from the shadowed heights. The chandeliers are intricate, made of brass or iron with glass crystals that catch and scatter what little light remains, breaking it into fragments that dance across the ceiling and walls. But the light is so dim now that the crystals barely shimmer. They are reduced to points, tiny stars suspended in the darkness overhead. The vaulted ceilings themselves are expansive, rising in arches that meet at central keystones, their surfaces painted or plastered, decorated perhaps with moldings or frescoes that are no longer visible in the low light. The height creates a sense of openness, of space that breathes, of air that moves slowly through the volume of the room. Rain may patter on roofs above, a lullaby rhythm that begins softly and continues without variation, each drop striking the metal or tile or slate with a sound that blends into the next. The rhythm is not sharp or insistent but gentle, almost musical, a background texture that soothes rather than intrudes. The sound is lost inside the wide rooms filled with gentle emptiness, absorbed by the distance between roof and floor, muffled by the height of the ceilings and the softness of the furnishings. It becomes something felt more than heard, a presence in the air, a reminder of the world outside without demanding attention. Inside, the rain is only a whisper, a distant companion to the silence, adding texture without disrupting the stillness. Every surface feels paused, not abandoned, just resting until dawn. The counters and benches, the walls and floors, the lamps and the chandeliers, the booths and the carts, all of them hold a quality of expectation, of temporary suspension. They have not been left behind or forgotten. They are simply waiting, holding their positions, maintaining their readiness. The dust that has settled is thin and temporary. The shadows that have gathered will recede when light returns. The stillness is not emptiness but patience, a quality of being that allows for rest without resignation. The station breathes quietly, its spaces open and available, its surfaces cool and undisturbed, everything in its place, everything at peace, everything held in the gentle embrace of night, waiting without urgency for the first light of morning to return and set things gently back into motion once more. Warm floors gleam with polish under soft lamp glow, their surfaces reflecting light in subtle, muted ways that suggest care and attention given over many years. The wood is rich and dark, oak or walnut, perhaps mahogany, its grain visible in long, flowing lines that run the length of each plank. The polish has been applied and buffed until the surface holds a gentle luster, not mirror bright but softly radiant, catching the lamplight and giving it back in diffused pools that shift slightly as you move through the room. The floors are cool beneath bare feet but not cold, holding a temperature that feels neutral and welcoming. In some places, the boards creak faintly when weight is applied, a sound so soft it barely registers, a gentle acknowledgement of presence. Rugs spread thickly and quietly absorb the evening hush, their fibers dense and plush, woven in patterns that have faded slightly with time but retain their essential beauty. Deep reds and blues, creams and golds, colors that complement one another without competing, arranged in geometric designs or floral motifs that repeat across the surface. The rugs are layered in places, smaller ones resting atop larger ones, creating zones of softness within the rooms. They muffle footsteps completely, swallowing sound before it can travel, holding it within their woven depths. The edges are bound with fringe or simple stitching, slightly worn where feet have passed most often, but intact and secure. To walk across them is to move in silence, to feel the floor give gently beneath you, cushioned and forgiving. Fireplaces flicker in gentle oranges, their flames low and steady, burning wood that has been carefully placed and tended. The fire does not roar or crackle loudly. It whispers, a soft susurration of heat and light that fills the hearth without overwhelming it. The flames dance slowly, curling around the logs, licking upward in lazy tendrils that reach toward the flue. The oranges are warm and deep, tinged occasionally with yellow or the faintest hint of blue at the base where the heat is most intense. The fireplace surrounds are made of brick or stone, darkened by soot in places, their surfaces radiating warmth outward into the room. The glow reaches across the floor, painting everything it touches in soft amber and gold. Mantels decorated with vases cast soft shadows across paneled walls, the objects arranged with care. A ceramic vase holding dried flowers or branches, a small clock with Roman numerals, a framed photograph whose subjects are barely visible in the low light. The mantels themselves are made of carved wood or polished stone, their surfaces wide enough to hold these small treasures, deep enough to create a ledge. The shadows they cast are long and diffuse, stretching upward and to the side, softening the edges of the paneled walls behind them. The panels are vertical, fitted together with precision. Their surfaces smooth and painted in muted tones, sage green, warm cream, pale gray, colors that recede into the background and allow the room to feel cohesive and calm. Staircases wind gently upward, their steps broad and shallow, rising at an angle that feels easy and unhurried. The wood of the stairs is the same as the floors, polished to the same soft gleam, each step edged with a slight lip that prevents slipping. The risers are painted white or left natural, their surfaces showing the faint marks of use, small scuffs and scratches that tell the story of years of ascent and descent. The staircases do not climb steeply. They curve, following the contour of the walls, turning at landings where small windows let in traces of moonlight or where a single table holds a lamp or a plant. Hall sconces flicker against curved railings that run alongside the stairs, their brackets mounted at intervals along the wall, each holding a small bulb or candle flame enclosed in glass. The sconces are simple but elegant, made of brass or wrought iron, their light directed upward and outward, illuminating the ceiling and the upper portions of the walls. The railings themselves are smooth and cool. They're wood-shaped and sanded until it fits perfectly in the hand. They curve gently, following the line of the stairs, their supports, balusters, thin and evenly spaced, casting small repeating shadows on the steps below. Doorways arch softly, their openings framed by wood or plaster moldings that have been painted to match the walls or left in natural wood tones. The arches are not dramatic but subtle, rising just slightly above the straight lines of a standard frame, adding a touch of grace without calling attention to themselves. The doors that hang within these frames are heavy and solid, their panels recessed, their handles made of brass or ceramic, cool to the touch and smooth from use. Some doors stand open, revealing glimpses of rooms beyond. A bed with quilts folded at its foot, a chair positioned near a window, a shelf lined with books. And bay windows curve outward like still water, their panes set into frames that angle gently away from the wall, creating small alcoves within the rooms. The glass is old, slightly wavy, distorting the view just enough to soften it, to make the world outside seem dreamlike and distant. The windows are dressed with sheer curtains or left bare, allowing moonlight to filter through and pool on the cushions or seats built into the alcove beneath. The sills are wide, painted white or stained to match the floors, holding small objects. A teacup, a book left open, a candle burned halfway down. Bookshelves line walls from floor to ceiling, their shelves packed tightly with volumes of varying sizes and ages. The spines are faded, their titles printed in gold or silver leaf that has dulled with time. The books lean against one another, some standing upright, others stacked horizontally where space has run short. The shelves themselves are made of wood, their edges slightly rounded, their surfaces bearing the weight of the books without bowing. The smell of old paper and leather bindings lingers faintly in the air. Beds and armchairs sit waiting in gentle light, the beds dressed with layers of blankets and quilts, pillows arranged at the headboard, their cases smooth and clean. The mattresses are thick and inviting, the frames made of wood or iron, sturdy and silent. The armchairs are upholstered in fabric or leather, their cushions deep and soft, their arms wide enough to rest upon comfortably. They are positioned near windows or beside tables, angled toward the light or the fire, waiting for someone to settle into them, to rest, to remain. Wardrobes stand open with neatly folded linens visible inside, stacked on shelves or hanging from rods, the fabric smooth and pressed. The wardrobes are tall and imposing, their doors heavy, their interiors smelling faintly of lavender or cedar. The wood is dark and polished, the handles ornate, the hinges solid. Inside, everything is in order. Sheets and towels, blankets and pillowcases, all arranged with care, all waiting to be used, all held in readiness for the quiet comfort of the night. Up high, rooftops host terraces and potted plants that rustle in starlit breeze, the sound barely audible, more a sense of movement than an actual noise. The terraces are small and intimate, carved out from the sloping planes of the roofs or built as extensions from dormer windows, their floors made of tile or weathered wood that has turned gray from exposure to sun and rain. Low walls or railings mark their edges, providing safety without obstructing the view. The potted plants are arranged in clusters, terracotta pots of various sizes holding herbs and small flowers, trailing vines that spill over the edges and cascade downward. The leaves are dark in the starlight, their surfaces smooth or textured, catching the faintest glimmers of illumination from above. They move gently, swaying with the breeze, their stems bending and returning, a constant subtle motion that adds life to the stillness. Chimney pots stand in peaceful symmetry along the ridgelines and peaks of the roofs, their shapes varying from simple cylinders to more ornate designs with flared tops or decorative bands. They are made of terracotta or brick, their surfaces darkened by soot and weathering, some cracked or chipped but all still standing, still functional. They rise in pairs or groups, evenly spaced, creating a rhythm across the roofline. Smoke no longer rises from most of them at this hour. The fires below have burned low or been banked for the night, but a few still release thin wisps that curl upward lazily before dissipating into the cool air. The pots themselves are solid and still, their bases mortared securely to the chimneys beneath, their silhouettes crisp against the deep blue-black of the night sky. Weather vanes turn slowly under whispering winds, their metal forms rotating on well-worn pivots that have been in place for decades. The vanes are shaped like roosters or arrows, ships or horses, each one unique, each one marking direction with a pointer that swings to face the source of the breeze. The movement is smooth and continuous, never jerky or sudden, just a slow rotation that follows the shifting currents of air that move across the rooftops. The metal is old and oxidized, copper turned green with patina, iron darkened to near black with rust, brass dulled to a muted gold. The veins catch no light at this hour. They are only shapes, only motion, visible against the sky as darker forms that shift position incrementally, patiently seeking alignment with the wind. Finials point softly toward the moon, their forms decorative and purposeful, crowning the peaks of roofs and the tops of posts and railings. They are shaped like spheres or spires, like acorns or flames, cast in metal or carved from wood and painted. Some are simple, others elaborate, but all share a quality of reaching upward, of marking the highest point with something intentional, something crafted. The moon hangs above them, pale and distant, its light washing over the finials without creating harsh contrasts, simply illuminating their outlines, tracing their shapes against the darkness. The finials do not move, they are fixed, anchored, their purpose not functional but aesthetic, a gesture of completion, of finish. And satellite dishes sit still beneath the quiet dome of sky, their concave surfaces angled upward at precise degrees, aimed at invisible points far beyond the atmosphere. The dishes are made of metal or composite materials, painted white or gray, their surfaces smooth and unblemished except where weather has left its marks, streaks of rust, patches of discoloration. They are mounted on brackets bolted to chimneys or affixed to flat sections of roof, their cables running downward and disappearing through vents or gaps in the tiles. The dishes do not hum or vibrate. They are passive receivers, silent and unmoving, waiting for signals that travel through the air without sound or visibility. They add a touch of modernity to the older roof lines, but even they seem subdued in the stillness, their presence quiet and unobtrusive. Frost glistens on some rooftops, a thin layer of ice crystals that has formed where moisture in the air has settled and frozen on contact with the cold surfaces. The frost is delicate and intricate, each crystal a tiny structure of branching patterns, too small to see individually but visible collectively as a shimmer, a sparkle that catches starlight for a breath before melting into the night air. The frost spreads unevenly, thick in some places where cold has gathered, absent in others where warmth from below has kept the surface just above freezing. It clings to the edges of tiles and the tops of chimneys, to the railings of terraces and the rims of potted plants. The crystals are fragile, ephemeral, already beginning to soften as the night progresses, releasing their moisture back into the air in invisible vapor. Where the frost is thickest, it creates a texture, a roughness that reflects light differently than the smooth surfaces beneath. It transforms the rooftops into landscapes of subtle beauty, adding dimension and depth, making familiar forms seem new and strange and quietly magical. The rooftops themselves are varied in material and form, some steeply pitched with clay tiles in shades of red and orange, others shallow and covered in slate or metal sheeting that reflects the sky. Gutters run along the edges, collecting water that no longer flows at this hour, their interiors lined with leaves and debris that have gathered over time. The surfaces are cool to the touch, radiating the chill of the night air, their heat from the day long since dissipated. They stretch outward in overlapping plains, creating a topography of peaks and valleys, flat sections and sloping angles, a geography that exists above the streets and rooms below, a world unto itself, inhabited only by the wind and the stars and the quiet watchfulness of the night. Cobblestones gleam faintly under thin film of moisture that has settled across their surfaces during the evening, a layer so fine it is barely visible except where it catches the light. The stones are rounded and irregular, each one unique in size and shape, fitted together over generations, pressed into the earth and held in place by time and use. The moisture darkens them, turning grays to near black, browns to deep umber, creating a slick surface that reflects the few sources of light available. A distant street lamp, the glow from a window, the pale wash of moonlight filtering through clouds. The gleam is subtle, not a shine but a whisper of luminosity, tracing the curved tops of the stones and gathering in the gaps between them where mortar has worn away and moss has taken root. Cornices curve with faint frost patterns etched along their edges, delicate traceries of ice that follow the architectural lines carved into stone or molded into plaster. The cornices project outward from the tops of buildings, decorative bands that mark the transition between wall and roofline, their surfaces adorned with scrollwork or simple geometric shapes. The frost clings to these raised details, outlining them in white, making them stand out against the darker stone behind. The patterns are intricate and temporary, created by the particular way moisture has frozen in the cold air, forming feathers and ferns and lace-like structures that will vanish with the first warmth of morning. The cornices themselves are aged and weathered, their details softened by decades of rain and wind, but the frost gives them renewed definition, a brief clarity before it melts away. Ivy silvers across facades, its leaves small and dense, covering large portions of walls in curtains of green turned pale by moonlight and frost. The vines climb without support, clinging to brick and stone with tiny rootlets that grip the surface, spreading horizontally and vertically in patterns that seem both random and purposeful. Where the light touches the ivy, the leaves take on a silvery sheen, their surfaces coated with moisture that catches and scatters illumination. The effect is ghostly and beautiful, transforming the solid walls into something softer, something alive. The ivy moves slightly in the breeze, a collective rustling that sounds like whispers, like secrets being shared among the leaves. Behind the ivy, the facades are obscured, their windows and doors partially hidden, revealed only where the growth has been trimmed back or where it has not yet reached. Terracotta glows with distant lamps, the clay tiles and pots taking on a warm amber hue that seems to come from within. The terracotta is porous and textured, its surface rough to the touch, marked by the fingerprints of the hands that shaped it and the imperfections of the firing process. Flower pots sit on windowsills and line the edges of balconies, their earthy orange-red color enriched by the lamplight that spills from nearby windows or hangs from posts along the street. The glow does not change the terracotta's essential nature, but it enhances it, bringing out the warmth inherent in the material, making it feel alive and welcoming in the cool night. Attics peek from steep roofs, their windows small and square or round, set into dormers that rise from the sloping plains like small houses perched atop larger ones. The windows are often dark, their interiors unlit, but occasionally a faint glow shows through, perhaps a candle left burning, or a night light forgotten. The glass is old and sometimes broken, patched with tape or boarded over, or simply left open to the air. The attics themselves are spaces of storage and forgotten things, but from the outside they add character to the roof lines, breaking up the monotony of shingles and tiles, suggesting lives lived in all levels of the buildings, all the way to the top. Balconies overhang peacefully with rails twined in blooms, the flowers small and pale, barely visible in the darkness but present in their scent and in the delicate way they drape over the iron or wood of the railings. The balconies are narrow, just wide enough for a chair or two, projecting outward from the facades and supported by brackets or corbels beneath. The railings are ornate in some cases, simple in others, but all share the quality of being old and well used, their paint chipped, their metal slightly corroded. The blooms are jasmine or climbing roses, wisteria or morning glory, their vines wrapping around the bars and posts, softening the hard edges with organic curves. The balconies are empty at this hour, their doors closed, their surfaces damp with the evening's moisture, waiting for morning when they might again be occupied. And stone arches frame doorways that feel as timeless as sleep itself, their curves perfect and unchanging, carved or constructed centuries ago, and still standing without flaw. The arches are made of fitted stones, each one cut to shape and placed with precision, the keystone at the top holding all the others in place through compression and balance. The doorways beneath are recessed, shadowed, their wooden doors thick and heavy, their surfaces marked by iron studs or decorative panels. The stone of the arches is worn smooth in places, rough in others, its color varying from pale gray to warm beige depending on the type and the way light falls upon it. To pass through these doorways is to move through thresholds that have been crossed by countless others, to enter spaces that have sheltered generations, to step into continuity and history made physical. Sidewalk edges puddle gently, the water gathering in the low spots where pavement meets building, where curb dips slightly or where the ground has settled unevenly over time. The puddles are shallow and still, their surfaces dark and reflective, mirroring the sky and the buildings above in distorted, inverted images. They stretch along the edges in irregular shapes, connected by thin rivulets that trace the contours of the stone. Rain trickling through hidden gutters like miniature streams creates a soft, continuous sound, not loud enough to intrude but present enough to be noticed if you listen carefully. The water flows through channels cut into the curbs or through grates set into the pavement, disappearing into drains below, moving through a network of pipes and tunnels unseen. The sound is soothing and rhythmic, a liquid murmur that blends with the other quiet noises of the night, adding to the sense of a world at rest, a world where even the rain moves gently, without urgency, content to flow at its own pace through the darkness toward whatever destination awaits. Bridges, homes, shops, stations, and empty streets all rest together beneath wide, patient skies that stretch endlessly overhead, vast and deep and undisturbed by clouds or urgency. The sky is not black but a gradient of blues, midnight at its deepest, fading to softer indigos and violet grays near the horizon where the last traces of day have not entirely surrendered. Stars appear scattered across this canvas, tiny points of light so distant they seem to pulse faintly with their own rhythm. The moon, whether full or crescent, hangs suspended, casting its pale light downward without judgment or haste. The sky does not press down upon the city. It simply exists above it, a presence that enfolds and protects, that holds everything beneath it in a single continuous embrace. The city holds its breath in unity, nothing rushed, nothing hurried. Every structure, every surface, every corner participates in this shared stillness. The bridges span their distances without strain. The homes contain their warmth without broadcasting it. The shops keep their goods safe behind locked doors and darkened windows. The stations wait with platforms empty and tracks silent. The streets lie open and unoccupied, their cobblestones and pavement bearing no weight, no footsteps, no wheels. There is a coherence to this quietness, a sense that the city is not merely the sum of its parts but something unified, something breathing together as a single organism. The breath is slow and deep, drawn in and held, not from tension but from tranquility, from a collective agreement to pause, to remain still, to allow the night its sovereignty. The lights dim across the city, not extinguishing completely but reducing themselves to what is necessary and no more. Street lamps lower their glow, lanterns flicker down to their smallest sustainable flames. Windows darken as inhabitants retire or draw curtains against the night. The dimming is gradual, almost imperceptible, a slow fading that mirrors the way day becomes night, the way consciousness drifts towards sleep. The city does not go dark, it softens. It withdraws into itself, conserving energy, letting shadows expand and deepen, allowing the spaces between buildings to fill with darkness that is comfortable rather than threatening. The lights that remain are like candles in a vast cathedral, small points of warmth scattered throughout, reminding those who see them that they are not alone, that life persists quietly even in the deepest hours. The rooftops settle, their tiles and shingles adjusting to the temperature of the night, contracting slightly as warmth leaves them, releasing small sounds too faint to hear individually but present as a collective whisper. Tiny clicks and creaks, the gentle groaning of materials responding to change. The chimneys cease their smoking. The weather vanes find their positions and hold them. The frost thickens or melts depending on the air. The rooftops become landscapes of stillness, elevated platforms from which the sky can be observed without obstruction. Places where the boundary between earth and atmosphere feels thin and permeable. And every building seems to sigh into the night, exhaling the accumulated activity of the day. The footsteps and voices, the opening and closing of doors, the heat generated by bodies and fires and lights. The sigh is not audible, but it is felt, a release of tension, a relaxation of purpose. The buildings do not collapse or slump. They simply rest more deeply into their foundations, allowing their walls to stop holding quite so firmly, their frames to ease into the support structures beneath them. They become less vigilant, more trusting, accepting the protection of darkness and the absence of demands. The windows no longer need to see out. The doors no longer need to open. The rooms within can simply exist, filled with air and shadow and the faint residue of the lives lived inside them. These quiet architectures wait without effort, their existence requiring nothing, their presence a gift rather than an obligation. They do not strain to remain standing. They do not worry about tomorrow. They are held by gravity and design, by the work of those who built them and the passage of time that has proven their stability. They glow softly in shared stillness, each contributing its small measure of light to the collective dimness, each reflecting the moonlight or the starlight in its own particular way. The stone glows gray-white. The brick glows red-brown. The wood glows amber. The glass glows with whatever light passes through it. Together, these materials create a tapestry of subtle luminosity, a city that is visible even in darkness, that maintains its form and beauty without needing the full strength of the sun. And as they settle into darkness, they invite us to settle too, to pause, to breathe, to rest inside these gentle shapes and spaces until morning returns. The invitation is implicit, offered through the atmosphere itself, through the quality of stillness that pervades every corner. The buildings do not speak, but they communicate nonetheless, suggesting through their calmness that we might also be calm, through their restfulness that we might also rest. To move through these spaces, even in imagination, is to be affected by them, to feel the slowing of pulse and the easing of thought. The sharp edges of worry soften. The insistent demands of the day recede. What remains is presence, simple, uncomplicated presence in a moment that asks nothing except that we allow it to exist. To pause is to stop moving forward, to cease the constant progression toward the next thing, the next task, the next destination. It is to stand still or sit or lie down, and to let time pass without measuring it, without counting the seconds or planning the minutes ahead. The architectures support this pausing through their own stillness, their refusal to change or demand or hurry. To breathe is to draw air into the lungs slowly, deeply, feeling it fill the spaces within, then releasing it just as slowly, feeling the body relax with the exhalation. The night air is cool and clean, scented faintly with moisture and the subtle fragrances of plants and earth. To breathe here is to exchange substance with the world, to participate in the fundamental rhythm that sustains all life. To rest inside these gentle shapes and spaces is to allow them to hold us, to trust in their solidity and their peace, to close our eyes if we wish and to drift, knowing that the bridges will continue to span, the homes will continue to shelter, the shops will continue to wait, the stations will continue to keep their platforms ready, and the streets will continue to lie open beneath the patient sky. Rest is not absence but presence in its quietest form. It is the body and mind releasing their grip on activity and control, surrendering to the support that has always been there, that will always be there, until morning returns, bringing with it light and movement and the resumption of purpose. But that is for later. For now, There is only this, the soft darkness, the gentle glow, the quiet architectures, and the invitation they extend to settle, to pause, to breathe, to rest. And in accepting that invitation, we become part of the stillness ourselves, woven into the fabric of the night, held safely within these spaces that ask nothing and offer everything, until the first pale light appears on the horizon and the world begins again.